Hello, everyone. Welcome to day 8 of 30 Days of Prosperity. Today I decided to give you an example of someone in the Bible who eventually experienced rest after dealing with the season of toil and hardship. If you recall, yesterday I talked about everyone is looking for rest. In that I said, basically that everyone is looking for peace. Everyone is looking for joy. Everyone is looking for happiness. Everyone is looking for love. Everyone is looking for, a good mental and physical health. Everyone is looking for, are wanting to not have to worry about finances and money to pay their bills, So everyone is basically, looking for rest. So, like I said, today I'm just going to spend a few minutes. I mean it today. It's been a long day. But yeah, but today I'm going to just talk about for a little bit someone who experienced rest after I'm sorry, experiencing, a season of toil. Okay, so this story is coming out of the book of Ruth from the Old Testament. And for those of you who listen to the Daughter Arise podcast, for the last two episodes, I have been discussing the story of Ruth. Like I've mentioned, Ruth is one of my favorite Bible characters, and she's one of my favorite Bible characters because Ruth took a leap of faith. She lost she suffered tragedy when she lost her husband and became a widow, I believe, as a young woman. And so she took a leap of faith and went after a new life, in a new land, in a country that was different from her own. Like I said, the Ruth was from the country of Moab. Moab was a pagan nation. They worshipped different gods and not the one true living God. And the man that she married, he was an Israelite, from the country of Bethlehem, I believe Judah. And so she married a foreigner, and and the Israelites served, the one true living God, or they were supposed to serve the one true living God. Okay, so basically, let me just basically start from the beginning. So basically, a woman named Naomi and her husband and two sons relocated from the country of Bethlehem, Judah, and they relocated from there to the country of Moab. And as they were living in Moab, Naomi's husband Elimelech died. He passed away, and then I believe after, I don't know how long after his death, but his two sons Mahlon and Chilion married two Moabite women, and their names were Ruth and Orpah. Okay, and then tragedy struck this family again, and the two Naomi's two sons, Ruth and Orpah's husbands, Mahlon and Chilion, both passed away. I don't know if it was at the same time or at different times, but they both passed away. So now this family, really, was, like I said, these women, or should I say these women, suffered, unbearable grief, Naomi lost her husband and her two sons, and Orpah and Ruth were now young widows. Okay, so because the grief was so great, for Naomi, and the country of Moab probably just reminded her of everything she lost. She was ready to go home to Bethlehem. And so the two young women, Orpah and Ruth, decided they were going to, they loved their mother in law, and they decided that they were going to travel back to Bethlehem with her. So, so Naomi was fine with this at first, but then she changed her mind. And so she said to her, on their way to Bethlehem, Naomi said to Ruth and Orpah, and I'm in chapter 1, verse 8, in the book of Ruth. And so Naomi said unto Ruth and Orpah, go, return each to her mother's house. The Lord deal kindly with you as you have dealt with the dead and with me. The Lord grant you that you may find rest, each of you in the house of her husband. Then she kissed them, and they lifted up their voice and wept. So you can see Naomi used the word rest, that the girls will find rest, and if they, marry again, that they will find rest in the house of their husband. And when, like I said, rest, is basically described in the Greek dictionary as a type of heaven, but also, as I said, rest is like, is encompassing of our total well-being. Okay, and so the girls, you know, they didn't want to leave Naomi. Like I said, they loved her, and they wanted to travel back to Bethlehem with her. So they, began to cry and to weep, but Naomi, like, basically, said to them, well, I'll just go ahead and read it. So Naomi said in verse 11 to them, turn again, my daughters. Why will you go with me? Are there yet any more sons in my womb, that they may be your husbands? Turn again, my daughters. Go your way, for I am too old to have an husband. If I should say I have hope, if I should have an husband also tonight, and should also bear sons, would you tarry for them till they were grown? Would you stay with would you stay for them from having husbands? Nay, my daughters, for it grieveth me much for your sakes, that the hand of the Lord is gone out against me. Okay, so, Naomi was basically telling them, like, she was too old, to have any more children, for them to have husbands, and like she said, even if she was to have a husband, that night, with the girls wait, to these kids, became old enough for marriage, like she didn't want to subject these young women to a life of widowhood. Okay, so Orpah, she heeded the words of Naomi, and she turned back and went to Moab. But Ruth, she refused, to leave Naomi. And in verse 14, it says, but Ruth clave unto her. So Ruth held on to Naomi, and she refused to go back. She said, and Ruth said in verse 15, I'm sorry, in verse 16, and Ruth said, entreat me not to leave thee, or to return from following after thee, for whither thou goest I will go, and where thou lodgest I will lodge. Thy people shall be my people, and thy God shall be my God. Verse 17, where thou diest will I die, and there will I be buried. The Lord do so to me, and more also, if aught but death part thee and me. So as we can see, Ruth was not playing. She was not trying to leave her mother-in-law. Like it's by the words of Ruth, it seems as if she knew that there was a new life, a good life in Bethlehem waiting for her. So, verse 18 says, and this is talk about Naomi, it says, when she saw that she was steadfastly minded to go with her, then she left speaking unto her. And it says, verse 19, so that they two went until they came to Bethlehem. Okay, so yeah, Naomi couldn't even refuse Ruth, you know. So she allowed her to continue the journey to Bethlehem with her. So, because Naomi was gone from Bethlehem for so long, it was basically as if, she had to start over. Her husband, she and her husband, they had, assets, they had property and other things, but she didn't have no food. And until, something could sell or, whatever, she and Ruth had to eat, right? So Ruth went to, well, it was harvest time in the land. They were the it was time for the harvest, and they were harvesting wheat and corn and, barley and all that stuff. And so Ruth decided to go to one of the fields and glean behind to glean behind some of the workers, so as they were gathering the harvest, whatever that they dropped or, left behind, Ruth would go behind them and pick up what they left. So that was kind of like, strenuous, hard labor. That was toil, because she had to wait for these people to collect, get the harvest, the things, and then go behind them to, if they dropped anything, she had to go and search, and pick up whatever they dropped or left behind, so she could have been in the fields for hours sitting there trying to collect, what, they dropped or left behind, but she was willing to do that because, like I said, she and Naomi needed to eat. Okay, so as Ruth did that, as she toiled, as she worked by the sweat of her brow, um, the owner of the field, which was a man named Boaz, began to inquire about who she was. So, then his workers, um, shared who they felt Ruth was or who they knew Ruth to be. And so then Boaz told um, his workers, I'm just going to cut it short. You can read the whole story in the book of Ruth. But then Boaz told his workers to leave, some extra, on purpose so she could have more to gather to make sure her and Naomi would have enough to eat. Because, so happens Boaz was actually related to Naomi's deceased husband. Okay, so then, when Ruth found out what he did, she like asking him like, "Why are you showing me this favor?" And look at what Boaz said to her. And I'm in chapter 2, verse 11. And it says, and Boaz answered and said unto her, it has fully been showed to me all that you have done unto thy mother-in-law since the death of her husband, and how thou hast left thy father and mother and the land of thy nativity, and have come unto a people which you did not know. And he said, the Lord recompense your work, and a full reward be given to you and the Lord God of Israel, under whose wings thou art come to trust. So Ruth goes home and tell Naomi about her experience, on the in the field, and with Boaz. So in chapter 3, verse 1, Naomi said to Ruth, my daughter, shall I not seek rest for you, that it may be well with you. So here we see that word rest again. Naomi is telling her that she's going to seek rest for Ruth. She's going to show her how to obtain rest. So then Naomi give her some instructions, basically, showing Ruth how to let Boaz know that, basically she was interested in him. So Ruth followed those instructions, that Naomi gave to her, and then Boaz made, his intentions known to Ruth, and that is that he wanted, that he was also interested in her and wanted to marry her. But before he could do that, there was, like I said, Boaz was a relative of Naomi's deceased husband. And so before he could marry Ruth, um, and purchase, the land or property, that Naomi was selling of her husband's, that and it's a lot more to that part as well. But like I said, I'm cutting it short. I'm just focusing on the rest right now. But anyway, he had to. There was another family member that was in line before him to redeem their deceased relative's property. And then also, if that person wanted to redeem that property, he would have to marry Ruth, because Naomi, was an older woman. So since Ruth was married to Naomi's son that died as well, that would have been the son's inheritance. So the family member that wanted to redeem that property would have to um, uh, marry Ruth as well. Okay, so Boaz went to the next of kin and asked him, did he have intentions on redeeming the property? And that's in. Let me see. Hold on. This is in chapter 4, verses 5 and 6. And so the man wanted the property, but then Boaz reminded him, well, if you want the property, you're going to have to marry, um, his widow. And so the man, he didn't want to marry Ruth because guess what? You know, it was basically because he didn't want to marry a Moabitess. He didn't want to marry a woman from that country. So once that relative knew if he wanted that property, he would have to marry Ruth. Then he just gave up his claim on being next in line or the next kin to obtain or redeem that property from Naomi. So that moved Boaz into the position of being able to redeem that property and to marry Ruth. And like I said, that's what he wanted anyway. So it was a win-win for him, and Ruth. So Boaz and Ruth was married. So basically God just restored, Ruth's life. She was no longer a young widow. She was married to one of the richest men in the region. She didn't have to go glean behind those workers to get food. Her and Naomi was able to eat plenty. Like I said, rest. The rest of God is all encompassing of the total whole well-being, so that strenuous effort of toil, labor, of her eating by the sweat of her brow, of her, if their peace was disturbed, if their joy was disturbed, whatever that was disturbed was restored, and Ruth was able to live a happy life with her new husband, and they conceived, and she had a baby. So now she had a husband, a child, and then Naomi was like a mother to her. So Naomi was restored through Ruth's rest. Naomi had a son, a daughter, and a grandchild. So look how everything worked out. They suffered all that tragedy in Moab, but they left. They came to Bethlehem, and things were restored. They were both um, able to live in rest for the rest of their days. So that's all I have for today, ladies. I hope you were able to see how important the rest of God is, and how the rest of God is important to us as well. So we'll talk more about that, in days to come. So I will talk to you all tomorrow for day 9 of 30 days of prosperity. God bless and take care.